Welcome to Cat Has Questions, curiosity, stories, and the strange corners of everyday life. Hello, I'm your host, Kat. Okay, I am excited about this one. I didn't know if I would be, and then I read one article, and here we are. And if you know me, I love things to be just a little haunted, a little spooky spook. And actually, when I was looking into this one, it made me think of a story back when me and my siblings were little. I was probably like 8 or so. My sister would have been 9. My brother would have been 10. We were watching one of those paranormal investigative shows that was like really popular at the time. I can't remember the name of it. Maybe like Paranormal Investigation, like something so simple. I'm sure someone listening right now is probably screaming it at me, but we watched an episode and then we were going to bed. So we were all like a little jumpy, a little spooked, but me and my sister were upstairs in the bathroom brushing our teeth. And then all of a sudden, all of the lights cut out. So obviously we like jumped on each other and screamed. And when the lights came back on, I had spit toothpaste all in Abby's hair. And my brother, who was a little shit at the time, turned the breaker off for the bathroom. So I think that might have been the last time she watched anything kind of scary with me. It made me laugh thinking about that when I was looking into this one. But let's get into today's story. So at first glance, the house looks impossible. Staircases that lead nowhere, doors that open into walls, windows placed in floors, ceilings built just inches above the ground. Nothing seems to make sense. But the most unsettling thing about the Winchester Mystery House isn't that it's strange, it's that every strange choice was intentional. Every hallway, every dead end, every door that leads to nothing. For nearly 40 years, construction on this house never stopped. Not for holidays, not for illness, not even for grief. And at the center of it all was one woman, Sarah Winchester. The story you've probably heard is that she was haunted by ghosts, by guilt, by the spirits of those killed by Winchester rifles. But before we talk about spirits, curses, or seances, we need to talk about something much more human: loss. Because this story doesn't begin with a house. It begins with a woman who lost everything and had the means to never stop building around the absence. This is the Winchester Mystery House. So Sarah Lockwood Pardee was born in 1839 into a well-educated, socially prominent family. She was intelligent, musically gifted, fluent in several languages, and by all accounts, thoughtful and reserved. She wasn't eccentric, she wasn't reclusive. She was, by the standards of her time, impressive. In 1862, she married William Wirt Winchester, the heir to the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. So the Winchester rifle, this company sold rifles, would become one of the most famous firearms in American history. It was efficient, powerful, and widely used. It also generated enormous wealth. But Sarah's life did not unfold like a success story. In 1866, Sarah and William had a daughter, Annie. Annie lived for only a few weeks. She died of marasmus, a wasting disease that doctors at the time could not treat. I don't know what a wasting disease is. Parents talk today about grief changing the shape of their lives, but in the 1800s, it often defined it. Sarah never fully recovered from Annie's death. Friends noticed she withdrew. The loss settled into her in a way that never quite lifted. I feel like back then, obviously, this was not talked about as much as it is now when women have loss, miscarriages, children that die at a very young age. So I feel like that's why people kind of withdrew more. And then years later, she also lost her husband. William Winchester died in 1881 from tuberculosis. Sarah was left a widow in her early 40s, childless, unimaginably wealthy, and deeply alone. She inherited more than $20 million, the equivalent of hundreds of millions of dollars today, since this was, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and nearly half of the company's stock. She also received a daily income that continued to grow. Money didn't soften the grief, it just gave it space. After William's death, Sarah retreated from public life. She left Connecticut, she distanced herself from social expectations, And eventually, she sought something many grieving people search for when answers feel unreachable. She was trying to find meaning. According to popular accounts, Sarah consulted a medium. What she was allegedly told would later become the foundation of the Winchester legend. The medium claimed that Sarah was haunted by the spirits of those killed by Winchester rifles, and that these spirits demanded recognition. The message, as it's often repeated, was stark. To survive, Sarah had to keep building. If construction ever stopped, her life would end. Now, whether Sarah believed this exact version of events is debated. There's no transcript, no first-hand account from Sarah herself. What matters more is this. Something convinced her to uproot her life completely. In 1886, Sarah moved west to California. She purchased a modern farmhouse in San Jose. 8 rooms, unremarkable, ordinary. And then she began to build. At first, it looked like renovation, expansion, improvement, but very quickly it became something else. Something that did not have an endpoint. So, like I said, at first the construction looked reasonable. A new room here, a wider hallway there, an extra staircase to connect expanding wings. But then the changes stopped making practical sense. Rooms were added only to be torn down. Hallways doubled back on themselves. Staircases climbed upward, not toward a second floor, but just straight into the ceiling. Doors opened into walls. Windows were installed in the floors. And ceilings were built so low you'd have to crouch beneath them. I'm picturing like a fun house. From the outside, the house grew vertically and horizontally. Its shape became harder to define with each passing year. From the inside, it became something stranger, a place where direction itself felt unreliable. And yet, this wasn't chaotic construction. This wasn't sloppy or careless. Workers later described Sarah as precise, quiet, exacting. She communicated through written notes and a system of bells installed throughout the house. Each bell corresponded to a specific room or instruction. She paid workers well. She treated them fairly. She demanded accuracy. Blueprints didn't exist on paper. They all just existed in her mind. And construction literally never stopped for 40 years. Crews worked around the clock in rotating shifts. When one team finished for the day, another took over. The sound of hammering and sawing became constant. It was basically the house's heartbeat. By the early 1900s, the farmhouse had grown into a sprawling mansion with over 160 rooms. Remember, this started with 8 bedrooms. And still, Sarah kept building. What's important here is this. Nothing about this suggests neglect or confusion. This wasn't someone losing control. This was someone exerting it. So Sarah Winchester lived a highly structured life inside the house. She followed a strict daily routine. She slept in different rooms each night, sometimes to confuse spirits, according to legend, but possibly for reasons more practical. The house was enormous, so sleeping in different rooms kept parts of it lived in, used, awake. Each night, Sarah reportedly held seances in a room known as the Blue Room. She believed these seances allowed her to communicate with spirits, not just to speak with them, but to receive instructions. So maybe instructions on how to keep building the house? After these sessions, workers were often told to seal off certain rooms. Doors were closed, windows were boarded up. Entire sections of the house became inaccessible, sometimes permanently. The number 13 appeared again and again. Staircases were 13 steps, windows with 13 panels, chandeliers with 13 arms. To outsiders, these details fueled the legend of obsession and madness. But when you step back, another interpretation emerges. Ritual is a form of stability. For someone who has lost a child without warning, then lost a husband slowly and painfully, the world had already proven itself unpredictable. Ritual kind of brings predictability back. If Sarah built every day, then every day had a purpose. If she followed rules, then rules still existed. If she obeyed instructions, then something still made sense. The house wasn't just being constructed. It was being maintained emotionally. Each wall added was a decision. Each room sealed was closure. Each staircase to nowhere was a boundary drawn where none existed before. And as long as the building continued, so did the structure of her days. So there was a shift in how people saw her, obviously, kind of from a prominent woman to kind of doing this bizarre building of her house constantly. Locals whispered, visitors speculated, stories spread. Some said Sarah believed ghosts would harm her if she stopped building. Others said she was trying to trap spirits inside the maze of the house. Some claimed she was insane. But those who worked with her told a quieter story. They described a woman who was reserved but kind, private but generous. Someone who knew exactly what she wanted, even if she never explained why. And that silence is important. Sarah never defended herself publicly, never corrected the rumors, never clarified her intentions. She didn't need to explain the house to anyone else. It only needed to make sense to her. In 1906, the ground beneath California shifted. There was a massive earthquake that struck San Francisco and the surrounding areas, leveling buildings and killing thousands. The Winchester house did not escape damage. Entire sections collapsed. Chimneys fell, walls cracked, several rooms were destroyed completely. Sarah Winchester survived. But something about the house changed after that day. According to those close to her, Sarah believed the earthquake was not random. She interpreted it as a message. Punishment from the spirits for abandoning construction in certain areas or for failing to follow instructions close enough. After the earthquake, Sarah ordered the most damaged sections of the house to be sealed off. Not repaired, not rebuilt, just sealed. Hallways were closed, staircases led to nowhere permanently. Rooms that once bustled with workers were left frozen in time. Construction didn't stop, it just moved elsewhere in the house. And the house became layered, not just architecturally, but emotionally. Old damage buried beneath new walls. Unfinished grief preserved instead of erased. And still, day after day, the building continued. Sarah Winchester lived inside the house until her death in 1922. By then, the mansion had become legendary. Visitors came to gawk, locals whispered, stories grew more elaborate with each retelling. But Sarah herself never confirmed any of it. She never wrote a memoir, never left behind a clear explanation, never said whether she feared spirits, believed in a curse, or simply found comfort in building. When she died, something remarkable happened. Construction stopped. Immediately. Tools were set down, workers were dismissed. The sound that had filled the house for nearly 40 years, hammering, sawing, footsteps, just vanished. The house remains. A structure without a blueprint, a ritual without a manual, a response to loss that never fully explained itself. So what are we looking at today? Today, the Winchester Mystery House stands as a tourist attraction. People wander its halls, laugh at the staircases that lead to nowhere, and marvel at the doors that open into walls. It's easy to turn into a novelty. But the question that lingers isn't whether the house is haunted. It's why it needed to exist at all. Because behind every strange architectural choice was a decision. And behind every decision was a woman navigating grief with no map. So once you understand the history, the question isn't just what Sarah Winchester built. It's why she believed she had to build it this way. According to legend, the constant additions to the Winchester Mystery House weren't meant to confuse people, but they were meant to confuse the spirits. Sarah believed she was being haunted by the ghosts of those killed by the Winchester rifles, like I mentioned. And the house in her mind wasn't a monument, it was like a spiritual maze. The stairs that go to nowhere weren't mistakes, they were supposed to be decoys. The hallways that abruptly ended weren't poor planning, they were dead ends, traps meant to mislead spirits following her through the house. Doors that open into walls, doors that open into thin air, those weren't accidents either. The belief was that the spirits moved differently than the living, that they followed paths, not logic. And if those paths kept changing, if the house never settled, then the spirits wouldn't be able to find her. Which brings us to that seance room that I mentioned. Each night at midnight, Sarah would reportedly enter this room alone. She believed she was communicating directly with the spirits, listening, negotiating, taking instructions. The spirits weren't asking her to stop building, they were telling her how to keep going. As long as the construction continued, Sarah believed she was safe. If the building ever stopped, the protection would end. That's also where that number 13 comes in. In spiritualist belief at the time, 13 was thought to be a powerful number, one that disrupted balance and order. It symbolized transformation, death, and rebirth. In other words, instability. By repeating 13 throughout the house, 13 steps, 13 windows, 13 bathrooms. Sarah may have believed she was breaking patterns, creating spiritual interference, not harmony, protection. And then came the moment that may have changed everything. When that earthquake happened in 1906, according to some accounts, Sarah was trapped inside one of the rooms for hours, pinned by fallen debris. And when she was finally freed, something shifted. People think that the house that had protected her had nearly killed her. After that, the construction continued, but like I said, parts were just frozen and untouched, abandoned mid-construction. And that's why today, people still report strange experiences inside. They claim footsteps that don't match any person that's in there, doors that close on their own, cold spots that linger in sealed rooms. Skeptics say it's suggestion, atmosphere, history doing what history always does, but even skeptics tend to feel it because this wasn't random architecture. It was built with intention, out of belief, grief, fear, and the hope that if the house never stopped changing, neither would the danger. And maybe that's why the Winchester Mystery House still feels unsettled, because it was never meant to be finished. Was Sarah Winchester building to protect herself, or just to survive? If she believed spirits demanded the house, did that belief matter less than what it gave her? Purpose, structure, something to wake up for? Is it kinder to call her haunted or human? Because the truth is, we don't actually know what Sarah believed. What we know is that she woke up every day and chose to keep going. She chose motion over stillness, creation over collapse. And sometimes belief doesn't need to be true to be powerful. The Winchester Mystery House isn't just a maze of staircases and sealed rooms. It's a record of devotion, of ritual, of love that had nowhere else to go. Some houses are said to be haunted by spirits. This one might be haunted by something quieter, the echo of loss, preserved in the wood and glass, still standing long after the builder is gone. As always, trust your instincts and maybe don't take architectural advice from ghosts. Thanks for listening to Cat Has Questions. I'm going to post some pictures of the house on the Cat Has Questions Instagram if you're interested in diving in more. Please shoot me an email or a DM if you have a good story you want me to cover at cathasquestionspod@gmail.com. You can also find it in the show notes. Stay curious. Thanks for listening to Cat Has Questions. If you liked this episode, follow the show and share it with someone who loves a good spiral. See you next week.